Good morning, everyone. This is John Kogan. I'm the CEO of Performative, the online community for corporate finance, accounting, treasury, and related professionals. First, I would like to welcome everyone to today's webinar entitled How CFOs Are Driving Growth. CFOs are being asked to do more these days, and not just in their existing quote-unquote traditional roles. CFOs are increasingly looked at as agents of change in an area where we have traditionally not played, growth. CEOs and boards are giving CFOs more product line responsibility, more GM-like and actual GM roles, and more exposure to sales and marketing organizations. Are they grooming CFOs to be CEO? You bet. They're also trying to bring the intelligence formerly reserved for optimizing internal operations into the side of the business that's responsible for top-line growth. Are you ready to answer that call? Well, we're going to hear from a couple guys today who have answered that call. And before I get into any introductions or the rest of our preamble, I have to note that Jim McGeever came down with a very bad cold yesterday and is unable to join us this morning. I will be presenting Jim's slides, so he sends his apologies, and I send my apologies for any butchering of his slides that I might present. But we've got his content. I'm somewhat familiar with it, and I think we're going to still have a great presentation this morning. So just to let you know, it'll be me instead of Jim talking on that front this morning. We still have Rob Hull, our other speaker. First up, I would like to thank Adaptive Planning and NetSuite for helping us make this event possible. This event, like everything we do on Performative, whether it's events or our website, and access to all the wonderful information, is all free. And that's thanks to the likes of today's sponsors. So NetSuite and Adaptive Planning, thank you very much. A quick note on today's agenda. We will hear from two speakers, and then we will move to a panel discussion where we will spend the remainder of our hour. We would like this to be an interactive experience for you. So if you have any questions at any time, please go to the questions area in your GoToWebinar control panel and send us your questions. And go ahead and take a look at your control panel, just see where the question area is, and at any time we will let them queue up, and then when we get to the question and answer period at the end, we'll do our best to get through all of them. We can't promise to get all of them in, but we will try. Any that go unanswered, we'll try and follow up with you afterwards to get you an answer. So don't hesitate, throw them up there anytime, and we'll do our best to get to them. We will send out a link to the soft copy of this presentation to all attendees. We had some last-minute changes, so it might not be up yet, but it will be up on Performative very shortly, certainly today, and we will send out an email with a link, and you can just go and grab it on Performative for free, of course. We are offering CPE credits for the CPAs in today's audience. That requires us to do 2 polling questions during the course of today's webinar. They're not a test of what we've been talking about, but they are there to make sure that the folks looking for CPE credit are in attendance and paying some attention. Even if you're not a CPA, we would love to get your 2 cents, so please feel free to answer the poll questions regardless, and you'll see what those are when we get to them. Okay, simple enough. Let's go ahead and say a few words about Performative before we jump into today's presentations. For those who are new to Performative, we're the largest online resource and online community for senior finance, treasury, and accounting professionals. We reach over 400,000 CFOs, controllers, and related professionals every month. I like to say it's the most boring network on the internet. No one's talking about what they had for breakfast or sharing pictures of their dog. All we do is ask operational questions, and your peers and subject matter experts answer you. It's free, it's unique, it's incredibly valuable, and it's also completely ad-free, and we don't allow any self-promotion. So highly professional. If you have questions about what you're doing today at work or what your board or your CEO just asked you to do, nothing better than a few thousand CFOs, controllers, VPs of finance, you name it, out there who are interested in helping out and have probably done it before. So that's all at www.performative.com. We've got a number of goals for today. Foremost amongst them is we want to talk about CFOs driving growth at companies, and this is something that is a bit of a new trend. CFOs, of course, have always owned, quote-unquote, the debits and credits, even if you had controllers and technical accounting folks working on that, always owned financial reporting. And we've traditionally owned a lot of operational and administrative functional areas, IT, HR, administration itself, sometimes even internal operations of varying varieties. But rarely has it been owning growth, owning businesses, products, M&A, working directly with sales and marketing organizations to help them tune their organizations. In fact, I would say, given my experience, has often been something of an adversarial relationship with sales and marketing organizations. That is changing, and changing dramatically, and it's being led by smart CFOs and finance and accounting leaders everywhere. And that is to really drive growth at companies. And frankly, CEOs and boards of directors are asking their finance, accounting, even treasury leaders to get more involved in the sales and marketing operations to help drive the top line. And top line growth is something that we haven't spoken about much within the office of the CFO. But that trend's changing. So we're going to hear from two folks today who are going to tell us more about this. The first one, unfortunately, as I mentioned, but for those who are just getting on, is not going to be Jim McGeever. He has called in extremely sick this morning. He's a great presenter, so I'm sorry we're going to be missing him. I will actually stand in his place this morning. I'm actually going to present his slides, which are quite familiar to me. So this is Jins' background, and he has been he has an amazing background. He took NetSuite through their IPO. He was their 15th employee. He was their CFO, now their COO, and he had actually helped a company called Photon Dynamics go public as well as their corporate controller. So he has a much better background than I do. But I've been CFO at 4 companies. I was a VP of Finance at Cardinal Health, which is one of the 20 largest companies in the U.S. And I've been around the block a few times as well, and I've actually seen a lot of what he was talking about in his presentation today. So I'll do my best Jim McGeever imitation, although I'll be nowhere near as intelligent, witty, or funny. So let's go ahead and talk about the perspective of his presentation. So this is coming from the COO of a almost $250 million revenue company. They're well over $1 billion market cap, publicly traded NYSE. They operate globally. They're very rapidly growing. They're a leader according to obviously their revenue growth and their market cap, but also according to folks who know, like Gartner, a great leader in their space, and they have an awful lot of customers. Over 12,000 plus organizations, and they're growing at a clip of 30% a year. So this is a company that's growing very quickly, and their CFO, both current and prior CFO, are very involved in that growth. So let's talk about the CFO as a change agent. Number one, and these are all, we're going to hit 5 main themes here, and I'm going to hit them very quickly on this slide, then we'll dive more deeply into them. But nurturing new revenue models. There are a lot of new revenue models these days. We'll talk about one that's near and dear to NetSuite coming up soon. But CFOs are starting to, instead of react passively and be told, hey, we're going into a new business, we're launching a new product, and this is going to create a new revenue model for us, they're actually actively helping their companies move into new revenue models and find new business opportunities. So that's something we'll talk about at greater length. They're overseeing now the whole business. Certainly internal operations used to really be largely the domain of the CFO, and it's not at all uncommon for the entire HR organization, IT organization, and administration to report up to and through the CFO. And that's where it stops. Well, these days, the CFO is not running sales and marketing frequently. I guess that's happening in a couple of spots, but we're certainly having a lot more communication. We're providing a lot more service to those organizations, and we'll take a look at that from a number of angles. Optimizing processes for revenue. This is interesting. We used to get in the way of revenue. There would be pricing teams, there would be deal desks, and frequently finance was getting in the way of revenue. Now we're looking more at how can we help optimize the entire revenue process from soup to nuts. So we'll look at that. Creating a revenue-centric culture. This is a fun one. Can you actually generate additional sales from your accounts payable people? Turns out you can. And we'll look at some of the ways we're creating a revenue-centric culture from within finance and accounting. And then the CFO and the office of the CFO, as I call it, is more customer-facing than ever before. So we'll talk about all of these things, but in general, the big takeaway is the CFO's role has expanded greatly. From being the numbers guy or gal to genuinely managing revenue and efficiency across the organization. This is all great stuff. I personally view it as extremely fun and interesting, and I think it's a good thing that this is happening, but it's certainly something that we haven't been trained for, and we're happy to have everyone today so we can talk a little bit about it and share some thoughts and ideas. So let's take a closer look at those top 5. We'll start with managing the changing nature of revenue. So the old way for a software company, and remember these slides are all coming from Jim McGeever and NetSuite's perspective, software companies tended to be perpetual license driven. So the booking, getting that initial deal was everything. You get that done, you deliver some software, and then you're just on maintenance for however many years you have a customer. Quarterly performance was immediately evident in your P&L. What you booked showed up that quarter. There wasn't much lasting impact except for maybe a 10 to 20% ongoing maintenance per year. So the way you presented your financials and the way the every sale impacted your financials was immediate. There were a lot fewer moving parts in that arrangement. You didn't have to continue serving the same customer month after month after month the way you do in certain new models. There was less visibility and predictability, so it was always a question of what did the company close this quarter. It was very unpredictable. It could have a really high beta. Made it difficult for analysts following companies to understand what next quarter's performance was going to be by just looking at this quarter's. And sales own the revenue forecast, lock, stock, and barrel. The finance organization, maybe they had some participation. Certainly they were probably rolling it into long-term forecasts, et cetera. But beyond that, there wasn't a lot of play traditionally. The new model, certainly for NetSuite and for a lot of the software industry, and I would actually, John Cogan would dare to say, that this is the way that the vast majority of enterprise software will be delivered within the next 5 years. Even companies like Oracle and Microsoft are moving in this direction as quickly as they possibly can. And this is subscription revenue. The booking is just the beginning. If you're on a monthly subscription, quarterly or annual, you could lose that client at any time. This changes things massively. The internal visibility to all things bookings and continuing customer engagement is more important than it's ever been. So you used to focus as a CFO, not exclusively but highly on external visibility to bookings and the customer. Now it's as important to have that internal visibility across your organization because so many parts of the company are now responsible for keeping that customer next month. We had them this month. That doesn't matter next month. We have to win them again. We have to keep them again. So that is driving a lot of new behaviors, and that's being driven primarily by the finance organization. Pardon me. Model-driven P&L. So this is interesting. There's a lot more potential predictability in the P&L than in this SaaS or cloud-based, subscription-based model than there was in the perpetual license model. Because if you do succeed in getting people month after month, quarter after quarter, they're essentially renters. And that can be a much more predictable business model, a much more predictable revenue stream and cash flow stream than anything we've seen in the past. So this is actually driving a lot more predictability in the P&L, but it also means that businesses tend to grow more slowly. So whereas you might be able to get the same $1 million worth of licensing fees from a customer, you would do that over 3 years, 5 years, instead of getting that big lump up front and then just getting the 10 to 20% maintenance over the long term. And finance owns the revenue forecast. So finance has really become an intimate part of revenue forecasting, now working far more closely with the sales organizations, working with the regional sales leaders. Frequently now you'll see financial analysts assigned directly to sales organizations on a much smaller scale actually than they were previously. And that puts finance right in the middle of what's going on in terms of revenue forecasting for the company. So this is apples and oranges. It's truly just a completely different model. Number 2, cross-functional business efficiency. Finance was always responsible for business efficiency within the finance and accounting organizations, but now we're actually being asked to do these same things, be the process experts, the efficiency experts across the organization. So whereas we may have looked at the HR organization and tried to optimize that 5 years ago, 10 years ago, now we're being asked to do the same thing within the sales organization, the marketing organization. And what finance and accounting bring to this table is entire business visibility. So it allows us to really understand what's happening across the entire organization, and we have traditionally been the process experts. I don't know how that landed on finance and accounting, but I guess somewhere along the line we got good at that, and people started to depend on finance. You need to, update major processes in IT or in the engineering organization. Frequently, finance was called in. Now we're being called in into these new areas. Operationally, we're being asked to provide more information closer to real time for organizations that traditionally ran their own analytics, ran their own reporting, sales, marketing, and professional services. There's all sorts of measurements and processes that we're being asked to come in and help them with. So under number 3 here, opportunity to cash, people are actually looking across their business and understanding, okay, well, if cash is king and if sales are the front end of what gets us cash, how can we optimize the process of going from an opportunity, which is someone's idea that we're going to have a chance at closing something in our sales pipeline, all the way to collecting cash, and how can we do that in the minimal amount of time? Well, we used to only see the cash part of that. Now we're being brought in and figuring out how we can help shrink the entire process, close opportunities faster, and get that cash in the door more quickly. Now, even further up the sales pipeline is suspect to opportunity. This is more of a marketing domain. So before something becomes an opportunity, which is a potentially definitive sale, how do we get them into the pipeline? How do we optimize our marketing mix, get the highest ROI for those dollars? We're right in the middle of that now, helping our CMOs and marketing counterparts understand what's the cost per lead, where are our leads coming into the funnel, what are the most efficient channels. They used to do a lot of that themselves and with their own tools. Now we're stepping in, we're helping them, we're bringing tools, we're bringing our knowledge of analytics, statistics, process to bear. And then renewal to upsell. So renewals used to be handled as a very workaday kind of event. Oh, they had product X last year. Let's just make sure we sign them up again in 12 months. Well, now the service organization, which frequently runs renewals, sort of the folks responsible for the continuing relationship, now there's a lot of upsell they can be doing, and finance is right in the middle of understanding what upsells well. What should you be selling? Once again, it's about analytics, about statistical modeling. We are right in the middle of that, whereas we used to really not touch that too frequently in the past. So all of this requires cross-functional visibility. There are a lot of traditional measures that finance and accounting just cranked out on a monthly basis, and you can see some of them here. Now we're adding new metrics because, well, first off, there's new business models and new stuff to measure, so that kind of makes sense. A lot of operational measures, which don't necessarily have to do with debits and credits, but we're pulling those in. And actually, a lot of the technology we use these days helps us pull that in because they understand that these other measures are important, they accommodate it, But once again, it seems to be falling to the finance organization to take these measurements and make that reporting happen and disseminate that information throughout the enterprise. So we are right in the center of that. And then there's standard financial metrics that we've always, many companies have collected. A lot of today's tools and technology are making it not only easier for us to collect this, but easier for us to put it in the hands of people who can actually make direct impacts into these things. Finance professionals don't do a lot of the selling. So we've been reporters, and frankly, in the past, we've done a lot of reporting ex post facto, after the fact. Now, with today's best technology, we can actually push this information out to people who can change the outcomes immediately. We can help salespeople sell more quickly. We can help marketers get information in the hands of potential customers more quickly, more effectively. That's what we're doing. And here's a little snapshot of something that's on the dashboards of a lot of CFOs, and that is sales information. So not just high-level P&L, but getting right into the sales operations. How many deals have we closed? How big are the deals? What's been billed, unbilled? What's our ASPs? We're right in the middle of that these days. New challenges, but it's genuinely fun, and you're bringing all sorts of new information and power to your internal business partners. Next up, optimizing processes for revenue. What we're looking for here is less friction between sales and finance. I mentioned that's been an adversarial relationship. I've worked for some very large companies, Cardinal Health, Cisco Systems, Allied Signal, in finance every time. And it used to be difficult, frankly, and I won't name the organizations or the companies, but we were actually gatekeepers, and I think there was some pride in that. I know misplaced pride, but I think it was, hey, this deal isn't going to get past us unless it's, absolutely according to Hoyle, as they say. That makes it more difficult to make sales. And we'll address the other side of this coin in a moment. A lot of manual entry to create a sales order, very difficult and slow processes. Spinning wheels to get a quote together is actually difficult for salespeople to do their jobs, and that's because we weren't making it as easy as we possibly could in the sales organization or with the technology we were using. And that would create a lot of time in the sales process, and time means lost sales. The longer you have a sale out there, the less likely it will happen, and that is just by definition. So we weren't making it easy on our sales counterparts, and that means we weren't making it as easy to get sales as we could. Now there's a lot more focus on finance as a sales partner. How do we actually help them get sales done? That doesn't mean slapdash. That doesn't mean doing the wrong thing for the company or for the investors, but it means becoming more of a partner in all sorts of ways, changing our attitudes, and realizing that finance owns the top line. We do. Insofar as we touch the top line, we need to own that, and we need to bring all of our expertise to that process. Efficient sales contracting process. This is a place where technology is really helping, especially with a lot of the sales suites that are integrated and give you visibility from the CRM perspective, which is the pipeline, the opportunity, all the way through to the close process. That is really helping us help our sales partners. Self-service quotes, that's another technology issue largely, but it's also a capability that we've given up a little control on, but we've actually used systems to maintain the control, maintain the rules, but allow our sales partners to move much more quickly. Creating a revenue-centric culture. Capture more revenue during renewals. This is a great example. Renewals used to just be a simple process. No one was thinking of upsell, or very few people were. Certainly in finance, we weren't taking responsibility for that. But the renewal process, I think, was highly automatic. That's changing. How do you equip everyone to be a salesperson, even accounts payable, even customer support? These people can all support a sale or drive a sale, whether it's new sales, upsells. This is something that we can impact, and once again, it's an attitude. If you empower the AP person who's making the collection call, and if they're calling someone who might influence a sale, maybe the next sale, maybe it's the next renewal, that can make an impact on that sale, on that renewal. That's a training issue, that's an attitude issue, and that's something we're seeing changing across the country in finance and accounting organizations. And there's a lot of customer management that's now that actually has traditionally fallen to finance and accounting. If you take that customer management as an opportunity to grow the top line, you'll grow the top line. And the last item here, the CFO is becoming more customer-facing. B2B customers increasingly expect to engage with finance executives in all sorts of ways. You might be on the front line in the negotiation. You might be the person explaining the ROI to your customer. You could be walking them through your product. They look to the office of the CFO, and that's everyone from top to bottom, as people who will bring truth and logic and analysis, analytical strength, statistical purity to the selling process. They want to know what their ROI is, and sometimes they want to look beyond what the salesperson is telling them. That's a place where the office of the CFO can provide tremendous value. CFOs are always, have traditionally spoken to customers because we've been, I guess they trust us, like they trust their own internal CFOs and corporate controllers, et cetera. It's that openness, the honesty that really gives us the credibility to have this conversation with folks. But it requires knowledge that we might not have traditionally had. You have to know what's going on around the company. You have to understand your product. You've got to go way beyond the debits and credits in order to be a good salesperson. This is new. This is new for an awful lot of folks in finance. We were not trained to be salespeople. Frankly, a lot of people got into finance and accounting, I think, because they didn't want to be salespeople. But to be the CFO that your CEO and your board want you to be, in many instances, not all, but in many instances, that might require you to get very comfortable with this. And that means you have to know your product, you have to know your business, got to know your markets, have to know your customers. And you have to pony up and say, you know what, I'm going to do this because it's going to help my company. These are all wonderful new trends. I view them all as opportunities, and they allow finance professionals to do something new and interesting and really add more value. So the new CFO is a change agent. New revenue models we can bring to our company. Hey, maybe it's time to move to SaaS. Maybe you can drive that change at your company. The CFO is head of process transformation across the organization. We always owned that within finance and accounting and some places in operation. Now we can do that within sales and marketing. Maintaining strong controls while eliminating revenue bottlenecks. This is actually a lot easier to do. You just have to have the mindset and say, you know what, if we have the right systems and the right processes, we're not actually losing anything. There's not a train wreck out there waiting to happen. It's all controllable, but you can actually make it a lot quicker and easier to get deals done. And moving from managing the back office to influencing the front office. So that's it. Thank you, Jim McGeever, for those slides, and I'm sorry once again that he wasn't here to present them. He certainly would have done a much better job than myself, but at least we were able to go through and hit those top points. Now, at this point, we need to stop for one moment and launch our first poll. So once again, required for folks who want CPE credits, but we would love everyone to answer these questions. Because we'd like to know what people think. And the question is, what is the CFO's top job? Even if you're not the CFO, what do you think the CFO's top job is? We'd love to get your opinion on this and see what you have to say. So we'll just pause for a moment here. I'll also remind you that if you have any questions at any time, please go ahead and ask them through the question area of your GoToWebinar control panel. And we'll go ahead and leave that open for just another 5 seconds here. Anyone else who wants to get their 2 cents in, please do. And at this point, I'll go ahead and close that out. And we'll go ahead and move on to our next slide. So now it's with great pleasure that I turn the mic over to Rob Hull. Rob is the founder and CFO of Adaptive Planning. He has over 20 years of executive and financial management experience and a solid track record of building market-leading venture-backed businesses and high-performing teams. Drawing on his own experiences as CFO, Rob founded Adaptive Planning with a vision of providing CFOs with an easy-to-use SaaS-based solution for corporate performance management. Rob has significant experience both in leading corporate planning and reporting as CFO and in contributing to the planning process as an operational manager. Prior to founding Adaptive Planning, Rob served as CEO of ChemTracker and a CFO of a number of market-leading software companies, including LoopNet and Risk Management Solutions. Rob has been an active part of SaaS-based companies for the past 10 years and is a frequent speaker on both corporate planning and SaaS. Prior to his financial management roles, Rob was a consultant for Booz Allen and Hamilton. Rob, at this point, please relieve me. Take it away.
Thanks, John, and you did a fantastic job as Jim. So kudos to you for stepping in. I think that was very well done. You know, I've got a lot of similar content. I think that Jim and I view this in much the same way. Again, you know, my background, I've come at this from the perspective of a CFO, founded, in fact, a company in adaptive planning really dedicated to helping CFOs with this job of managing the business, really managing, in fact, the data and the information around the business. And I think that what I see, and even in listening, John, to you speaking the voice of Jim, you know, a couple of things really jump out at me, and that's that, you know, as a CFO today, we have the unique opportunity of having an enormous amount of data at our fingertips. And really, I guess what I see in the role of the CFO is that with all of that data, really the organization looks to the CFO to capture and help them to assimilate all of that information, but then to provide some good analytics around it, and really then with that be good problem solvers, process experts, and very good at sort of overall corporate collaboration, really a focal point for information and communication across the organization. That's a role that I've played. You know, at Adaptive Planning, we've been able to grow quickly, 82% compound annual growth over the past 5 years. We were just ranked number 8 on the Deloitte Fast 500 and number 85 overall, and number 8 in Silicon Valley. So really experiencing some of this growth firsthand, and hopefully that's a little bit of what I bring to the conversation today. You know, at Adaptive Planning, we really do have a vision of making finance transform itself in the company's performance management practices. And we looked at some research from McKinsey and Company that said really expectations have continued to increase for finance. And this slide represents a little bit of that vision as well as our own vision of how that finance team moves beyond effective financial management and scorekeeping, but really becomes a trusted, integral member of the strategic management team. How do you go from managing the numbers to strategically guiding the business? And so let me just walk through a couple of stages here real fast. I think this is probably pretty self-evident to many, but really in the first stage, finance, in many cases, still a lot of companies out there really focus on just managing the numbers. It's detailed accounting and transaction management. There's very little focus necessarily on the systems. They may be really kind of battling systems, whether it's using Excel or a variety of other things, to really get out and prepare financial reporting, monthly reporting of a management sort, and even annual budgeting. Now, as they move up the ladder, really in phase 2, finance really becomes much more focused on the process, consistent process, control, and risk management. And those processes then of reporting and of planning and looking forward begin to get improved with better data and much more regular variance reporting and analysis. Now, typically, companies move on from there into a third phase where finance really has become much more focused on looking forward and not just tracking history. Very focused on planning and analytics, the overall performance management process, and they really begin to provide financial analysis to management as a whole for making decisions. Really beginning to execute regular rolling forecasts and providing a lot better reporting for analysis. And then finally, kind of moving into that final stage, becoming a strategic partner to the business, really integral to the company's management team, getting strategic value across the organization. In this role, really identifying opportunities, providing very critical information and analysis, and ultimately resulting in a key contribution to that growth of the business as a whole, growth across the organization. Here's just another little piece of data that I thought might be helpful. This is some data from a quarterly Deloitte publication called the CFO Signals, tracking the thinking and actions of CFOs from many of North America's largest and most influential companies. And this is third quarter 2011 data, where they asked CFOs what their bosses were asking them to focus their attention on. There's two dominant areas that are kind of classic finance roles here, and that's supporting the development of strategy and driving the execution of strategy. But if you look just behind that, there's really a more active role in shaping the details of the company's strategy, which is kind of a testament not only to the amount of strategy rework going on, but also to the value-added role that the CFO is playing in strategy definition itself. And so all of this, again, pointing to the much more value-added role, much more growth-driven role that CFOs are playing today. So I'm going to try to break this down into 3 simple bites, very similar, I think, to Jim/John's 5 steps. But you know, as I look at this, and if someone was to come to me and say, how do you think about fueling growth in a business, for me it comes from a couple of core things. And the first and foremost is to know your customers, really understand the problem that you're solving. The second then is to instrument your business, to find metrics and enable some good tracking for that. And then finally, with that in place, you really can help the organization to run more efficiently. Use the data that you've got and use the insights and understanding that you've gained by listening to and understanding your customers to make the organization more process efficient. So I'll walk through those 3 real quickly here in a little bit more detail. First is really understanding your customer, and from my perspective, and I think Jim echoed this as well, you've really got 2 customers. There's the external customers, those folks that are buying your products and services, and you've got your internal customers, right? You're helping and working with the management team and the board of directors to guide and manage that company. And understanding the needs of both of them will really empower you to impact the most critical areas of your business in this growth, in this pursuit of growth. We talk a little bit here internally about having 2 ears and 1 mouth. Make sure you're listening intently. You know, use both ears and listen to what's being said, and that really here applies in both cases. You know, understanding from external customers, why do they buy from you? And then in understanding your internal customers, what can be done to help them sell more? And so if you think about the external customers, those buying your products and services, one of the things that I find as CFOs most helpful for me is really getting out and talking to customers, understanding a variety of things. First, what need does our product fulfill for them? And you know, in my case, it's very clear to me because I was trying to solve my own need as a CFO, but really understanding what the customer needs. Why are they buying our product versus our competitor's product? What is it that they see in us, and how price sensitive are they? That comes into play because as a CFO, you are in the middle of that price process, either in helping to set pricing or in helping to understand discounting across the organization, having a role in contracting. How do those customers find you? Understand that sales and marketing process, that marketing funnel filling process, and then sales cycle times. How long is it before they've decided that they're looking for something to when they've actually bought something from you? Those are all elements of a process that I'll talk a little bit more about in just a minute. Internal customers, equally important, right? Understanding how you can drive growth is going to be really dependent upon how well you can understand what the team as a whole, the organization as a whole, needs to fuel their part of that process. And so start with the sales team. What do they need in order to maximize sales? How can you help sales and marketing understand the company's strengths? Which products sell most effectively? Which products are most profitable for the company? And really help them to understand that so that they're capitalizing on the company's strengths. Again, looking at pricing. What is it that can be done to maximize those price per units, price per deal that becomes very critical in this very efficient sales and marketing engine that you're going to help create? The marketing team filling that pipeline. How are they doing that? What are they doing in the process? Are they effective at it? Instrumenting that for them to help them understand what they're doing that works and what they're doing that might not work so well so that they can most effectively target their resources. And then ultimately, we'll talk a little bit more about this, but what hurdles can you remove along the way? So listening first and foremost, understanding both the external customer perspective as well as what's happening internally and how it works, how can you make it more efficient. I think that there's no conversation about growth that isn't going to focus on truly understanding this sales funnel process at your company. Now this is an illustrative sales funnel. This is not necessarily what every one of you is going to see in your business, but this is what we see. This is how we look at that process. How do we, as a marketing organization, come in contact initially with folks? How do we move them then into becoming more qualified leads? What are the steps in that process? How does a lead then get transferred over into the sales organization? A handoff from marketing to sales so that it now actually becomes an opportunity, a true sales opportunity, and not just someone who's expressed interest. And then finally, how do we move as a sales organization those customers, those prospects through that sales process to ultimately become a win? I think the key thing here is, again, understand what the stages in that kind of a process are at your company and begin to really understand how your company does at moving people through that pipeline. So conversion rates, that's really a key aspect of this. How many people move from qualified lead into sales meeting? How many people as a percentage move into the next phase of demo and then ultimately move to win? What is that overall conversion rate? One of the things you can then focus on is helping the organization, helping marketing, helping sales to understand where one part of the process may work well, but there's another part that is the bottleneck. And therefore, what can be done to improve conversion rates at a particular stage of the process? Ultimately, the goal here is to improve and increase conversion rates overall and make sure that the entire sales and marketing organization understands how that process works, what their role in that process is, and again, how effective your organization is at moving things from one stage to another. That's helpful then not only internally but also externally, as you can begin to get some information about how do you compare to others in this conversion process. As you move on then from listening, it then takes you into a next phase, which is instrumenting. Again, I talked earlier about, there's so much information now at your fingertips. It's both a benefit and a curse. And so the key here is how can you put systems in place to allow you to very, sort of very accurately and on a very ongoing and real-time basis, both plan and measure those elements, those key business metrics that really are critical to driving your business. And so for us at Adaptive Planning, this really is a process. This is what we do. It's the corporate performance management process, really a holistic view of the company that is about delivering timely and accurate information through dashboards, KPIs, reporting, allowing you as an organization to quickly reforecast, to create very driver-based plans and perform all kinds of what-if analysis. So in the middle of a month, understanding whether it's a macroeconomic driver that may be changing or it's something very unique and specific to your business, a new product line that's coming out, allowing you to perform scenario analysis around that so that you understand and can communicate across your business what is expected going forward. And I think a key aspect of this as well in instrumenting your business is make sure that you've got good tools in place to really drive enterprise-wide collaboration, that everyone understands what the metrics are. They are specifically given goals driven by very quantifiable metrics, and that as a finance organization, not only have you enabled that process, but then you've enabled good ongoing communication of progress against metrics, reforecasts against changing information, and again, just keeping that cycle of information going so that everyone understands the detailed data that applies to their portion of the business. Finance plays a key role in that. You know, as a CFO, you sit at the hub of all of that information and are very able to help the organization understand data in each of their particular areas and how it interrelates to the other parts of the company. Really putting good systems in place to make sure that communications happens effectively is a critical part of your role. Jim/John has gone through a couple of growth examples in terms of the metrics as you instrument your business that you should be thinking about. Now, I won't walk through all of these here. I think the key from my perspective is there are a number of very important metrics in really understanding both what does it cost you to bring business into your organization, and once you do that, how big are those deals? How effective is your team at maximizing the size of the deal? And then how effective is the team as a whole, whether that's, you know, we look at a variety of what we call sales performance ratios to say, you know, how effective is a particular rep relative to what they're bringing in? What are we paying that rep relative to what that rep brings in? Creating metrics like that that are, you know, again, this is all very specific to us as a software business, but similar metrics are going to apply across any number of industries. And I think the last thing I'll focus on here, and it's something that John touched on earlier, and that is really making sure that you understand, and in our case, we look at it as churn or retention. We've got customers that are on subscriptions, but the bigger picture question here is how can you make sure that you are constantly monetizing the customers that you have? That's not just the very initial sale to them, but that's the sale to them on an ongoing basis. As a company, as an organization, you may have additional services, additional products that can be sold to those customers. Helping your organization understand what opportunities you can take advantage of with your current customer base is always incredibly helpful. The cost of acquisition of a new sale to a current customer will always be less than the acquisition cost of a new customer. And then finally, some production issues, right? Whether in this case this is from a service-based organization, so looking at service-based metrics, but really understanding what that organization is able to produce and making sure that it's as efficient as possible. So for a service-based organization, utilization rates, billing time, and then ultimately impact of the product. How can you sell? Which products are you know, effectively most profitable to you, and how can you make sure that your organization is selling more of that product, that is what drives your business overall? So looking at product line margins, having some good analytics around that, and sharing and communicating that information to the rest of the organization so that the company as a whole has institutional knowledge about what best to sell as an organization. I think the final step of this here is really that, again, as the CFO, you are at the focal point of all of this information and at the focal point of being able to communicate it across the organization. And so you are best positioned to advocate for change organization-wide. So first and foremost, really facilitate good collaboration across the organization and establish goals and demand accountability. Right? You know, good financial and operational plans, compensation tied to performance, and goals that have been clearly set and coordinated across the organization, and a process that enables you to quickly reforecast as things in your business are changing. We talked about the sales and marketing engine, but as a finance organization, helping to promote a very effective sales and marketing engine is just paramount to rapid growth. Understanding and helping the sales and marketing understand what the acquisition costs of your company truly are. What does it cost to acquire each new customer? Help them to understand how to fine-tune that. Are there things that can be done to drive costs down without impacting conversion rates along the way or without impacting average deal size? And then really help the sales organization to understand how to get the greatest deal size out of what they're doing, right? Whether it's discounting and understanding what they're doing on a discounting basis, whether it's product composition, which products are being sold and which are most effective in the larger deals, and ultimately really helping the sales and marketing organization to understand that conversion process. Make sure they know what the steps in the process are, instrument it, and help communicate back to them where they're succeeding in that process and where there are some challenges. And then ultimately, your job is to help the organization identify and remove hurdles. And again, that can be in that process of sales and marketing. It could be as simple as contracting. You know, what can you as a finance organization do to help make the contracting, the sales process, an easier process for the sales reps? Whether that's lead to win, the fulfillment on the back end, you know that the deal has come in, help track how long it is until the customer is fulfilled, whether that's on a product basis or a service basis. Product development, make sure that your product team, your manufacturing, in my business, it's all about software. Do they understand what the sales organization is planning to sell, and are they building appropriately to support that plan? Good communication across the organization. John touched a little bit on this as well, and that's finance as a center point for then understanding where the strengths and weaknesses of the company are, understanding where the company sells well in the marketplace, and then helping to look for and promote both partnerships and acquisitions that can increase your deal size without increasing acquisition costs. That's a key area that the CFO can play a very prominent role in. And then finally, just making sure that the organization is delivering the product that the customers really need. Don't let your product organization think about things that are really cool but that don't sell, that the cost of development is greater than ultimately the reward or the revenues that the company will be obtaining from that product. So, again, it's a process of helping to facilitate the sales to make sure that everyone is aligned, that they understand the sales process, that hurdles are removed, that goals are set, and that ultimately communication is happening broadly across your organization. John, with that, I will turn it back over to you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Rob. That was great. Let's go ahead, since time is a fly-in here, let's launch the second and final poll. And once again, even if you're not here for CPE credits, we'd love you to go ahead and take a swing at this. We've got some questions queued up here, but if you have any questions you're thinking that you'd like to put in front of Rob and I, please do so right now, and we're going to get to them in just a moment. So the question here is, what is the greatest challenge for today's CFO? Sure, we might not have captured every single challenge, but certainly let us know what your thoughts are here. Even if you're not a CFO, give us your perspective. And I didn't mention this before, but all of this is anonymous, so don't worry, your answer will not have your name next to it. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and close out this poll. Let's go ahead and take a quick peek at these poll questions as a way of getting us into the conversation here this morning. So Rob, what is the CFO's top job? I'm stunned. Actually, what do you think of this?
Well, I guess given today's webinar topic, I'm not entirely surprised to see that folks are focused here on helping the company grow. Growth, profitability, cash management, certainly very top of mind for everyone. Interesting to see absolutely zero on fundraising and essentially the core of getting the numbers right. I would have expected maybe a couple of votes there, but great to see that folks are focused on growth.
Yeah, that is tremendously interesting. Okay, let's go ahead and pop the second one out, and then we'll get to some actual questions. So, what is the greatest challenge for today's CFO? Also interesting. What do you think about what we're seeing here?
Yeah, well, we're certainly getting a little bit more broad. People poking on each of the categories. Fundraising is still not getting much, so I guess that tells me that everyone's having great success raising funds, and they aren't spending a whole lot of time thinking about it. But
yeah, that's interesting. They must have they've all got more funds than they need.
That's
good
great.
for them. We'll announce where they can send their excess cash later. In enterprise risk management, I was expecting to see a lot there, and the board. That's also interesting to see that. Not surprising coming in third, but still a lot of people spending an awful lot of time on that, on all that other stuff, HR, IT, admin. So I think that.
Yeah. And I wonder, you know, maybe from my perspective, I think one of the things is certainly because of the position that we have in talking with folks, but one of the things that I find in talking to people that they do struggle with is information management across the company, and how do you get the critical pieces of information, you know, filtered out of all of the proliferation of data that's out there, but really critical pieces of information in a timely fashion, communicated broadly across the organization. I do find that people are still struggling with making that happen well.
Well, you know,
there are solutions for it.
Well, that actually leads into our first question, which, given our timing, might be our last question here. But let's see if we can really quickly address this, Rob. First question is, I'm drowning in tactical stuff, which actually speaks right to that HR, IT administration. How do I clear that out so I can actually have some peace of mind to think about helping our sales and marketing organizations, or just doing something I haven't done before?
Yeah, I guess from my perspective, this is so common, and I think what it boils down to is that the finance organization tends to be overworked and understaffed. There's just simply not enough resources typically. So, you know, I wish I had a silver bullet answer for that. You know, the sort of easy answer is, well, hey, you've got to make sure you got enough resources internally to make sure that those blocking and tackling things are getting done by folks paid to do the blocking and tackling, and freeing you up as really a strategic leader of the company to not get bogged down in the blocking and tackling, but really be able to rise above that a bit. I think that the challenge there ends up being that, especially over the past few years, right, the cost-conscious nature of finance in general, but in particular in a tough economic environment. And so the other alternative there is really to find ways of making the staff that you do have more efficient and more effective, so that in fact you can get them to be owners of those blocking and tackling tasks that may be on your plate today.
And not to be a shill at all for our current sponsors today, but I have to throw my 2 cents in here. Technology can actually help a lot. There's so much going on today in tools and technology that can be really picked up and implemented in a way that you couldn't even dream of a decade ago. I mean, a decade ago, if you had some monolithic ERP system, making changes to that meant calling your IT director and getting on a 6-month schedule, and, you know, having them put God only knows how many man-hours into, you know, just cranking out a report. Crazy. These days, there's actually an awful lot available to help with all variety of processes and procedures, and it runs the gamut, from reporting to things that will help your sales and marketing departments, to optimizing your close. There's a lot there that can be picked up quickly and cheaply, and used in ways that just weren't available just a few years ago. So I would say look to technology. If you can't bring on more headcount, or much more headcount, you might find some salvation in technology. And with that, I hate to say it, we've come to the end of our hour, and we want to be respectful of everyone's time. So let me take care of a couple pieces of housekeeping before we let you all go here. Number one, thanks so much, Rob. Really appreciate your time and insights today.
Oh, thanks for having me.
You bet. Our pleasure. We'd certainly love to thank our friends at Adaptive Planning and NetSuite. They enable us to put on events like this, and by the way, support the entire website and all the wonderful knowledge there, and allow us to do it all for free to our users. So thank you so much, Adaptive Planning and NetSuite, and of course Rob from Adaptive Planning. If you have any questions about CPE credit, please contact Dawn Moore. You can see her email at the bottom. We will be sending out soft copies, or actually a link to the soft copy of this presentation. It's freely available on Performative. If they don't already have it out on the site, it'll be out shortly. You will get an email within 24 hours with that. And finally, there will be a survey that pops up when we close down this webinar. If you wouldn't mind giving us just 2 minutes, let us know what you think. And if you have any questions for Rob, myself, or in absentia, Jim McGeever, let us know. We make it really easy. There's just a couple of clicks of the mouse, and we're happy to make an intro for you. So with that, we thank everyone for your time today, and we hope to see you at our next event or at Performative Online. Take care, everyone.